Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Backwards Traveler. I am Andy Nichols here for a very, very special episode with a man holding up a magazine of George Harrison. Who's that? Who's that? That would be Eoghan Lyng. Hello, Eoghan Lyng. Welcome back. Good to talk to you again.
Hello. It's actually my first time on this show. We did the two-leg stuff.
We did, and this is just me on my channel, and which I rebooted some months back just to do anything that I wanted to do, whether that was Paul, Beatles, anything outside the Beatles, which is what today's episode is on. And even though we connected in the Beatles universe, we have shared passions of music, and it's good to have you back on again. And Eoghan Lyng, who has written for numerous online sites, publications, but there it is, one of his most recent works. He had just wrote a piece that is featured in Record Collector on George Harrison. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. It's the fifth commission I've been lucky enough to get from Daryl Easley, and the very first one I got was about the band Genesis.
And that is why we are here today, to dive into a little proggy rock as we put our Beatles and solo hats off today, which kind of ties into the most recent episode that I did on Hands Across the Water with my mates Beatley Tone and Kyle Hand. We talked about everything outside the Beatles, and today here on my channel we are talking about the 50th anniversary box set and the album just in general, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which was the final Genesis album to feature Peter Gabriel, which came out in November of 1974 and was just received a long overdue box set that just came out at the end of 2025. And we are here to talk about this album and all its complex story, narrative, recording sessions, our favorite tracks, the weirdness of it, which I still don't understand 20 years later. I've read the story a million times, but it'll never make sense to me. I've seen the musical box, the tribute band. I've seen them recreate this show numerous times. It's just a fascinating piece of music that, boggles the mind when you try to figure it out. But then, as I often say, it's just about the music when you listen to this. And if the music sounds good, the hell with the storyline. And let me just ask you, Eoghan, what was your entry point to this album, to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway? Did you come to it early? Was it a late discovery? Was it 80s Genesis that pulled you in and then you went to this? How did you discover The Lamb?
Well, it would have been through like a greatest hits with obviously like the Phil Collins era. And but then when I was 16, I was a proper prog nerd, and I think the very first Genesis album I borrowed from my library was Trespass, actually, which just goes how nerdy I am. That's a pretty good album. I quite like it. I've interviewed Anthony Phillips, and he's a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it was when I was in Italy for a family holiday in 2012, July 2012. I bought a copy of both Selling England and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in a record store in Italy. Now, for those who don't know, in Genesis in countries like England and Ireland, they're well liked. In Italy, they are gone.
Huge in Italy. I mean, even go back, a Nursery Crime did very well in Italy.
Yeah.
The Italians love their prog, but they really love Genesis, early Genesis, which is amazing. You wonder why that hotbed of Europe, especially Italy, the Italians go gaga for Genesis. Have you ever done any insider study into the fandom or why?
I don't really know. I asked Anthony Phillips about this, and he just said that he thinks it's because Italians are very turned on sort of people, and there's a lot of, and that they would just gravitate to the complexity of it all. And I mean, if you consider the fact that Salieri was a great Italian composer, and they've got a great history of a Bastian opera comes from Italy, I suppose. But it still baffles me. I was in Florence in 2019, and I passed a bus, and there was a poster of Steve Hackett on the bus. That's how big Genesis are. There's no way you would pass a bus in Dublin and there's a picture of Steve Hackett. That's not gonna. I'm not even sure you would pass I'm not even sure Peter Gabriel would get onto a bus in Dublin.
Probably not, but look at the fandom. You can look at somebody like Armando Gallo, right? So who is Italian, and he's been chronicling the band for 50 years, and he's published books on his photography and writings of Genesis, and he's been acknowledged by the band even.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also Mario Giametti.
I've always been fascinated with the Italian love of Genesis. I remember they've talked about that many times. The band, Peter Gabriel talked about the success of Nursery Crime and Foxtrot and the early kind of getting putting the woman's red dress on and doing Suppers Ready and traveling and going there. You could look at bands like ELP and Yes, and they didn't have the same success in that country.
Yeah, well, it might have something to do with the costumes and the theatricality, that they weren't quite so, we're not looking up from our instruments the way some other prog bands were.
And when it comes to the Lamb, depending on where your entry point is for Genesis, again, compilations were the same way for me, where I discovered the band. And then I kind of went through Trespass and Work Your Way Up and then Selling Them by the Pound. And then again, I had this kind of I was like loving the whole proggy rock double album thing, whether it was Tales from Topographic Oceans and of course this album. And I'm like, I want to learn more about it. So eventually, probably I would say right around the time when 2007, when the remasters came out and they were all kind of redone in box sets and all that, and he had all those different ones come out, and fans either a lot of the hardcore fans did not like those Nick Davis remixes, which I personally like. Did you like those or not?
Well, Nick Davis is a very sound producer. I interviewed Tony Banks and he said he loves working with him.
And that for me, around 2007-8 is when I really took my plunge into, I would say, the Peter Gabriel era of Genesis, and diving into the Lamb was something that I just knew. Having already conquered Topographic Oceans from Yes, I said, okay, I can do this now. I can listen to this music. I'm ready to conquer. You read forums and online stuff, and everybody's like, oh, the Lamb. It's such a polarizing record. These fans either love it or hate it. In your opinion, I mean, do more people like it, in your opinion, that you've come across, or they just totally disavow it?
I think it's seen as the album that you're supposed to think is like the ne plus ultra, the magnum opus, the holy grail of Genesis. I'm not so convinced. I preferred the likes of Foxtrot and Wind and Wuthering myself.
Yes.
I like the kind of like the old England tales, which Gabriel very much wanted to move away from with Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I think I agree with Tony Banks in that the first two sides are much stronger than sides 3 and 4.
Agree.
And Steve Hackett has said that the album is a bit too long, which I'm also inclined to agree with.
It is a fantastic record that when you come right out of the gate, I mean, the first two sides are absolutely incredible. From the title track, setting the stage in New York City, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Fly at a Windshield, Cuckoo Cocoon. When you get to sides 3 and 4, and there are some brilliant tracks that are on the album later. I particularly love Steve Hackett's solo on the Lamia. I think that is beautiful. I think that's a wonderful track. But sometimes like the waiting room, and I understand that these pieces of music were composed as like jams, or they were used as warm-up things for when the band played live. But let's just dive back into where Genesis was at the time. Selling England by the Pound for me is the quintessential early Genesis kind of high watermark. Steve Hackett will tell you that. I think Peter Gabriel will tell you that. Tony Banks will tell you that as well too, and Phil. But for whatever reason, the band was a democratic unit for writing all their material up until that point. And now the band decide to go to Headley Grange, where Led Zeppelin had recorded the fourth album, and lock themselves away in a rundown house, go and do this stuff, but left Peter Gabriel up to write all the lyrics. And for such a band that wanted to be so democratic in their writing, why at this stage did they let the lead vocalist take on all the writing? That might be kind of a, you want to look at the cracks in the wall of Genesis and why they splintered off. Well, then why did they allow Peter Gabriel to do that?
Well, that was a bone of contention. I think Tony Banks is upset about it to this very day. I think the others have made peace with it. I don't think Phil Collins was ever too bothered about it, or Steve Hackett. Mike Rutherford, like Banks, was a bit reluctant to let one person do so much writing. But I think to this day, it still upsets Tony Banks that he let it happen. Maybe he feels like that they could have recorded another album or two with Peter Gabriel if they hadn't. Who knows? But I think the thing is, so that with the Peter Gabriel has that great quote in the 2014 movie, the documentary they did, where he said, "If you're gonna create a world, you need one person to paint it.
Yes,
novels aren't written by a committee."
I know what he was getting at with that quote, but they left it to it. At that point, Genesis was still, very cultish status. They had not really broken a lot of ground. They were big on the college circuit, making their rounds around Europe. They hadn't made a huge splash in America, although they had come to America I think there was those great photographs of Genesis in Central Park in 1973. So they were still very much an undergrad. They were not on the level of Yes, ELP, even in terms of success at this time in America. They were very much a junior status band. So here now you have an album, you're going to go in and do a double album.
Yes.
And which is kind of really ballsy. And you wonder, I mean, we know that Peter Gabriel was married to his first wife, Jill, and this was a big bone of contention with the band because he wanted to spend more time with her and raise a family, and his child was born during the album. So now the band is at Headley Grange, and now he's leaving to drive away, and they're like, well, is he in the band or not? All the while being lured away by William Friedkin to go work on a film.
Yeah, and also you're forgetting that Steve Hackett has an accident. He broke his hand. He broke a glass, which put him in hospital.
Right.
So a lot of the hard graft had to be done by Banks, Collins, and Rutherford, as they did on Prick of the Tail, because Steve Hackett was busy working a solo album. So by the time they get to record, and then there were three, they basically said to themselves, well, we did 2 back-to-back albums, just the 3 of us.
Right. But I mean, you look at
it's not that big a deal.
It's not that big of a deal because knowing the history of the band. But when you think about it, Hackett coming and going, Hackett's frustrated. He wants more of a voice. I mean, he's got lovely flourishes as a guitar player on this record, but there's not a lot of room for Steve Hackett on here. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go off and do Voyage of the Acolyte, which is basically a Genesis record because Phil's on it anyway. And a brilliant record. Brilliant. Voyage of the Acolyte, Shadow of the Hierophant, all of that. One of the best solo records ever. So, but now Tony Banks gets cheesed off saying, well, what do you save that material for us? We'll be part of the band. But he didn't feel like he had a voice for it. And I love Tony Banks, but he's a stubborn one. He wants things his way.
Yeah. Banks is like the McCartney of Genesis, and Steve Hackett was like the George Harrison.
Correct. He's like, fine, I'm gonna fuck off. You're not gonna take my stuff. I won't play the way you want me to play. Fine, I'll go do my own album. So all this band tension going on with the Lamb, and you've got this really dense story about a guy, a Puerto Rican punk who goes to New York, who gets basically taken over by monsters and supernatural stuff, and gets his wiener chopped off and all this other stuff. And I don't understand. I don't understand the story a lick of it, but musically, the playing on it is phenomenal. I think even Phil Collins has said they didn't feel like they got a good, proper recorded sound until they recorded this album, which I think was John Burns. John Burns did this one too, or no?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, there had been rock operas before. The Who had done Quadrophenia and Tommy. Bowie had done Ziggy Stardust. So it wasn't too wacky an idea. But I think I agree with you. The story is quite obtruse. I'm not sure it's as fully developed. And I heard on a podcast that the guy behind the waiting room, whose name I've forgotten right now, he contributed to the Genesis issue, the Record Collector Genesis issue that I did. He wrote the piece on Wind and Wuthering, but his name I've forgotten. He said that the story, that Gabriel wrote a story, but it went away from him. He lost the track of it. I think there might be something to that. It's a bit like Francis Ford Coppola last year with Megalopolis.
Right.
I'm sure he intended it to be this great spiritual experience, but it got lost in the process.
It does, and I could see why some Genesis fans are like, this is the best record of all time. Other people can take it or leave it. I think that when you look at the tracks, obviously Genesis took parts out of it, and I mean, especially with what they did with In the Cage later on, incorporate that into the live show. That, of course, In the Cage is probably a highlight of the record, and they basically made that a big focal point of their concerts from that point on, and centering medleys around In the Cage and the whole Brother John being caught. And Tony Banks has said that, okay, that's a concept we can understand. Freedom, wanting to get out, being trapped in a cage. And it worked well as a live piece.
Incredible. And they also segued it into Afterglow, so that's like a wonderful 15-minute, just 2 classic tracks together, just for that.
Right.
I mean, obviously I was too young to see Genesis in 2007, but I have seen that When in Rome film, and just the way that they go from something so hard-hitting as In the Cage to something so elegant and beautiful as Afterglow. It was such a masterstroke.
And then incorporating the Duke's Travels suite at the end of that too. Phenomenal.
Yes.
Phenomenal use of this song within the cage and Peter Gabriel's writing, and the fact that they kind of paid tribute to it. I'm just going through disc 1 here, or LP 1. I think a track like Back in New York City, which Mike Rutherford cites as a great one too, is a real funky track to hear that live. It's just,
he's in like this. I don't think he gets enough credit as a bass player. He's a phenomenal. He's a wizard of a bass player. Like Back in New York City, or a later track like No Reply at All. He's got such good funk. He's a limited lead guitar player. His guitar, I was never blown away by his guitar solos. But as a bassist, he is something. Yeah, as a bass player, he is superb, and you never see him on lists of greatest bass players of all time, and I think he's up there.
He should be. I mean, if you've gone to Genesis shows or even Genesis tribute shows, and you hear those bass pedals, and you're in the audience, it knocks you out of your socks.
Yeah.
You hear any of that bass work on any of this stuff. I mean, Mike Rutherford always brought it as a bass player. Phenomenal bass player.
Incredible.
Underrated. And I love Chris Squire. Chris Squire, for me, is the number one. But, I mean, Mike's right up there.
Yeah, I think he underrates himself, because he always says, "So, well, I was a guitar player who had to play bass, but I always saw myself as a guitar player."
It's so hard to understand when he speaks, man. Damn.
It's that posh 1940s squadron kind of voice. But that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, when I interviewed Steve Hackett 2 years ago, he told me that Charterhouse, the public school 3 of them went to, he said it fucked them up, and he used that adjective. He said it fucked them up.
Why?
Well, just because they went from very, like, when you could be prime minister one day, rules are rules, and never seeing a teenage girl being sexually repressed, and very, very strict regulations and rules, to the point where it basically killed their social skills. As he said to me, Steve Hackett had this great quote. He said, "If you want to be the Chancellor of India, the role is only available to one." So that's the thing. In Charterhouse, they were taught to kind of be, put yourself first. And so when you're in a band with 3 guys who've grown up with that mentality, as well as being ambitious musicians, it can't have been very easy for his confidence.
Probably not. And then you've got these 2 outside public school boys with Phil Collins and Steve Hackett going, "What are you 3 on about?" They were very much the outsiders when they joined that group.
Yeah. But Phil was very light with it. He's like, I didn't really mind that stuff. I was just having a spliff.
It's a pity that it ended with this album, but I suppose where do you go from here if you're Peter Gabriel? I mean, like, how could the band have continued as a 5-unit piece after this record?
No, there was no way that Peter Gabriel could go back to playing on other people's songs, and no, he realized he needed complete freedom, and he felt hurt by the lack of support from Banks and Rutherford while his wife was going through a difficult birth. And just as they were horrified that he walked off to work on a project with William Friedkin, and I think relationship was on an absolute low. I mean, there was even talks of Gabriel said even before the tour happened that this was going to be his last tour, and he said it upset him that he couldn't admit to the audiences, "This is my last show." But he was told by management, if you do that, you'll scupper any success of the band and the tour. I'm not sure I agree with that myself, but it's what he was told. I think he's resentful about that he had to hold it in for so long, that it took him nearly 2 years to admit he had left the band. But in their defenses, they were always very gentlemanly about one another. There's very few instances of them bad-mouthing each other in the press. There's none of this "how do you sleep" nonsense that we get with the Beatles.
No, they were pretty much very polite to each other. They were. Publicly. They were, even though there might have been some feeling behind, especially with Steve behind the scenes, with between Steve and Tony, particularly, I'm sure. But publicly, you're right, though. They always kind of kept things above board, which was nice to see.
The only thing I can think of where Tony Banks sounds a bit resentful is he really didn't want to do those WOMAD shows and kind of reluctantly agreed to do them to help Peter Gabriel out. But as soon as they were finished, he just wanted to forget about it, which people say, "Oh, he's so miserable about it." It's like, well, no. He didn't want to get back with Peter. I mean, who knows? They were best pals, and Peter walked out, and maybe it felt like meeting his ex-wife.
Exactly. I mean, to revisit all this material in 1982, when they're at basically the height of the beginning of their pop era, after Abacab and all that stuff. Now you're going to go back and play Supper's Ready. I understand why he didn't want to do that. I mean, a little bit of a lost. I wish we could have had some of those films, recorded properly, and there's some great bootlegs of it, but too bad. But I know Phil said it was pissing down with rain all day, and to go back and do the lamb and coming out in the casket and all that stuff. But it's theatrical, and Genesis music is very theatrical, especially this period of Genesis music is theatrical. I mean, going all the way back to dressing up in costumes, culminating in this live act, which I think it was a mistake to want to go out and play this double album live from start to finish. They should have just gone out and done a little bit of the album and play, everything else that they were known for. I think it was a mistake to do that too, especially in America where they didn't really know this album yet. Now you're going to play the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. I know, I agree with that. I think that was a questionable decision, and also, of course, there were mishaps. Some of the costumes, like the Slipperman costume, Gabriel went into, affected his vocals because he didn't have one of these internal mics. He had to sing into a microphone, so all people heard.
Right.
So it was like The Dark Knight Rises 30 years before the release of it.
And I think even Phil is quoted saying that by that point now, I mean, really, is this about like music or is this about theatrical and costumes? Or even Phil, especially with the Slipperman costume, was like, well, what are we really doing here? Like, is it about the music or is it about a stage show? And and it became more of a stage show. I mean, but then there are elements of that show which are pretty cool. Especially, I think, is it during In the Cage where there was two Peter Gabriel? There was two of them, right? One side by side during the show, where and disappearing. And have you had a chance to see the musical box do this, Owen?
No, not yet. Should I?
Oh, you should. They really, I mean, and that is totally done with slides that Genesis used on the tour, done with their endorsement, which is really cool to see them do. And it's not easy. And even they have had trouble reproducing this show live because I've seen them do this show at least 2 or 3 times. And it's a doozy. But I will say, by the time you get to, Supernatural and Anesthesis and stuff and Silent Sorrow, you're like, ooh, this is quite a long show. Brilliant as those songs are, but
was it the New Yorker that described the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway as the Ulysses of rock operas, which I wouldn't agree with. I think that plot belongs to Quadrophenia.
Yes, I think, but it's hard to wrap your head around of it. But individually here, there are moments of brilliance. I mean, and some pop. I mean, Counting Out Time is a track I love that track. You've got elements of pop on this. Darker stuff. Of course, I mean, the Carpet Crawlers being, I think, the standout track of the entire record. Would you agree?
I would actually go with the title track as the standout track. I just love the opening. It's like something Freddie Mercury would have played on a Queen album from that time. Just it's this long baroque, and then it turns into a punk track, and I just love the dichotomy of ornate and then just barreling rock.
And again, that's a song that you can listen to without being so dense where you're like, well, what am I trying to figure out? No, it's just The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. You don't have to have any context or history or lyrical analysis with it. As a song by itself, it is probably the highlight. I will agree with you. It's definitely the highlight of the whole album, but you don't have to have a whole lot of context about it. Or what about The Lamb?
Yeah, Peter Gabriel performed it himself as a solo artist. It's one of the few Genesis songs he would do by himself.
Very early on in 1977, 78, those Rock Palace shows and things like that. I think he did a few times.
Yeah, the first 2 albums where he still had to throw in some Genesis songs.
Yeah, I just wish he would. I wish he would have kept doing it, and he stopped.
Yeah, it's a shame.
I mean, I think it was some years back when him and Sting toured, and Sting ended up singing "Dancing with the Moonlit Night," not Peter.
Oh, that's a shame.
It's a damn shame.
Will you tell me where my country lies?
Sting doing it. Oh, my God. I had a chance to meet Peter Gabriel back in 2022 for a book signing at the Strain in New York City for this book, Reverberation, which is basically I Do Everything Better with Music, written by Keith Blanchard. And Peter wrote the foreword for it. So I'm like, okay, I got the chance to go meet the man. And he was wearing a mask. And he's such a soft-spoken man. And he speaks so slowly. So I took my time, finally got up to him. I said, Peter, thanks so much for all your music. I said, I've played a lot of your Genesis era music. I said, I'm in New Jersey. And he looked up and he goes, is New Jersey, is that little place across the water from here? I said, yes, it is, Peter. I said, I've played, the Lamb stuff and early Genesis stuff. And then he looks up at me. He goes, does it freak them out? I said, yes, it does. And he said, I've done my job then. And then he signed my copy.
He's got a wonderful sense of humor.
He does.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the TV series Brian Pern, but he's basically mocking Peter Gabriel and doing all that. And then Peter Gabriel in a couple of episodes, in one episode, Peter Gabriel attacks him like he's the two gangsters in the Long Good Friday, the two IRA men, and they mimic the whole. And like Gabriel's there with the gun, and he's smirking, and Peter Gabriel's there, like driving the car, and the Brian Pern's doing the whole.
Yeah.
Brian Pern. I'm the singer of Touch.
Owen, on the second disc, we both agree that it does peter out a little bit, but what are some individual highlights of yours on the second disc of The Lamb?
Oh, that's a good question. The Lamb Dies Down on Broadway is a good. It's like Sgt. Pepper, how they reprise it and rock it up a bit and make it more dramatic. That's definitely a highlight. Is in the Screes on the third side three? Yeah,
Riding the Scree. Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of like 1970s funk. They're great keyboard playing from Banks.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel that like an album that was supposed to be so anthemic does kind of, it peters out. There's no big flourish of a big finish of a track. Like you would think maybe The Light Lies Down on Broadway would close the album, but it kind of just peters out with that track, with the track which is a great song. It just feels like that's the end of the album. But what happened here?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Well, that's quite often the way with double albums. Like, I'm going to upset some people here, but the White Album, it really peters out with the last three tracks.
Well, it does tie a nice bow on it with Good Night, doesn't it?
Good Night's rubbish.
Oh! I can see.
For the record, in case anyone, maybe a Tony DeMeo, is in the comment section saying, is upset by a comment, I only say these things because I genuinely believe them. I don't say these things to cause.
You're not Hot Take Lyng. Hot Take is Mr. Jeff Slate, not you.
Well, I do have some hot takes, but I'm not doing it just for the sake of. There's a former podcaster I could mention who had a grudge against Paul McCartney, but I'll be a gentleman and not say who that is.
I think we know who you mean. Wink, wink. One of the cooler aspects of this record that I think I enjoy quite a bit is about 20 years after this came out, the first Genesis Archive box set came out, Archive #1. And this included a full performance of The Lamb from the Shrine Auditorium, which is now included again on this box set from the 24th of January, 1975, which is a great recording. But back then it was very controversial because in 1998, when it came out, a 50-something-year-old Peter Gabriel re-recorded his lead vocals for that performance, which a lot of people thought, oh, that's not authentic. It's not good. I personally loved it. I loved hearing an older Peter Gabriel sing on this recording. I think that was a great, brilliant way to do it. Because the quality, as you mentioned earlier, when you're trying to sing the Slipperman and you're buried in under a costume, you can't hear it. I loved hearing an older Peter sing on these older recordings. Owen, what would you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think that he brings another perspective to it. Years ago, in 2022, I interviewed Bernard Butler, the former guitar player from Suede, and he just reissued his one of his solo albums and re-recorded all the vocals. And he just talked about how, life experiences changes us, and are we the same people? And he was going into that philosophy. And even though we might return to the same material, we're not the same people who wrote and recorded them. And George Harrison's also re-recorded My Sweet Lord and did a lovely version. It was months before he died.
Correct. Yeah. To go back and revisit this stuff. And one of the things I would like to say, though, I do like the fact that, the band here now, 50 years on, they're on board with it. I mean, you're looking at the credits here. There's a Dolby Atmos mix available of this, and it says under the supervision of Peter Gabriel and Tony Banks. So despite them kind of this really falling out after this, here they are now, elder statesmen getting back together and say, you know what, let's do this box set. Let's do it right. Even though Tony doesn't like it and Peter walked away, here they are now 50 years later. How old were they at the time?
Like 23, 24. That's how shockingly young they were.
Yeah, in their 20s. And how here these men in their 70s now going, okay, let's let bygones be bygones. Let's put this box set together and do it. And one of the great lost opportunities, I think we know about this, is when I think it was around 2005, before they got together for that 2007 reunion tour, they were going to do a 5-man reunion with Peter and Steve Hackett and redo The Lamb, but then Peter never showed. Oh, that was probably our only opportunity to see these 5 guys.
I know. it's gutting, it's heartbreaking. But I think Peter Gabriel wanted to turn it into a musical, and Banks vetoed that. Banks said no way.
It's so funny to watch, and you see this with the Beatles and John and Paul too, especially those guys, because they were Charterhouse, they were buddies forever, and they were like the glue of the band. And those two, they've drifted apart as the years went on, and Tony took more control after that, and it really became Tony's band after that. It really did.
I would say, with the caveat that I think by the We Can't Dance album, I think Phil Collins did have a lot of control on that album because everyone knew that was going to be his last.
Definitely from A Trick of the Tail to probably Invisible Touch. It was Tony. Tony was driving the band when you think about it.
Oh yeah, he very much became their most prolific songwriter. And although he did write, I was surprised to find this. He wrote the lyrics to the Cinema Show on the Selling England album.
Right, and that's a song. And Peter wanted to chop off the instrumental bit, and vice versa. And Tony wanted to chop some of the lyrics off. And they said, "No, leave it as is. Cinema Show is a brilliant track. Leave it alone as is." It's such a polarizing record because, to me, Selling England by the Pound is a perfect balance of everything that is great about early Genesis. One record, all 5 musicians playing brilliantly. And the Lamb is not. The Lamb is so uneven. Moments of brilliance in this whole thing, but it's a very uneven record. And I can say that now with 20 years hindsight. 20 years ago, I might have said, "Oh my God, The Lamb is the best thing in the early Genesis." But now, with some hindsight, I can definitely see why it is viewed as a flawed record. Would you agree?
Yeah. No, it's very slapdash. If Selling England is the band's revolver in that everything is pristine and so well done and they're working together as a band, then I would say this is their white album where they're just experimenting for good, bad, or ugly.
As we said at the start of the show, I guess they felt, okay, this is one person's vision, we're going to go with it. And it just does not work out. I mean, listen, the album has its hardcore fans. They probably know every nuance of it. They know the story. They're all into it. But again, with context, it's not going to be considered the big high watermark for the Peter Gabriel Genesis. That's going to be reserved for Selling England by the Pound and maybe to a lesser extent Foxtrot. But
I think my favorite of those Gabriel albums is Foxtrot because we go from Watcher of the Skies to Get 'Em Out by Friday, and then we end with the greatest thing they ever did, which is Supper's Ready.
Supper's Ready. And, it's a shame. I mean, they did 2 encores on tour of this album, which was basically just Watcher of the Skies and the musical box, which is, I think, what a lot more fans wanted of the time. They're like, we don't know this whole new album. What are you doing hitting us with all this stuff? We don't know any of it. But just going through, I mean, it's been nice to see even Steve Hackett over the last year, he kind of did a Lamb highlights show. Did you have have you had any opportunity to see Steve? I know you interviewed him, but had to see Steve?
No, I haven't. I've interviewed him twice. I haven't seen his shows, but I have got some of his albums.
I got to say, when I started my Genesis journey 20 years ago, I was like, it's going to be Peter's solo career and Phil's solo career are going to be my favorites. I got to tell you, Steve Hackett has been the winner of the solo career for me. His solo albums for me are a home run. Now, he produces a lot of them and he churns them out very quickly, but I mean, he records at home. He tours prolifically. I've exchanged emails with him a few times. He'd like to come on at some point. I might revisit that again. But we've exchanged some emails, and he knew. And this was through Two Legs, but he said, "Sure, I'd love to come on and talk." And I haven't seen him probably in about 3 or 4 years. I did meet him for one of his shows right before COVID, which I'll flash the picture up now. But lovely man. He does a perfect balance of the Genesis material and his own solo stuff. And I mean, even stuff like Wolf Light from 2015, which I thought was a great record. His own, and then he does the early Genesis stuff so much, because he's the only person doing it, Owen. Nobody else is carrying the Genesis torch at all except Steve Hackett.
I agree. I mean, The Night Siren, I got that in 2017. That was a wonderful album.
Yeah.
He was doing all he had uilleann pipes, he was experimenting, and in 2024 he released his own rock opera that I interviewed him about. What's the name of that album?
He releases so many you can't keep up. The Circus and the Night Whale.
That's it. That is it. That was a fantastic album. I know I forgot the name of it, but no, I told him that some of it reminded me of like A Day at the Races Queen, and he was flattered by that.
I just love how he's carried this torch and ran with it. And I mean, even something like The Surrender of Silence, which came out in 2021, He's got this track called The Devil's Cathedral that he does, and that comes down so well as a live song. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one, but it's such a good freaking song. And again, you go see these shows and you're like, wow. But for me, Spectral Mornings is a thing of beauty. I mean, I know we're going into solo stuff here, but it's a Genesis chat. It's a Genesis chat. It all kind of falls under the same umbrella. But
well, I mean,
yeah.
I love A Curious Feeling, which was Tony Banks's debut album, and that's his own rock opera.
Yeah. But Wolf Light, I thought was great from Steve Hackett. Did you like Peter Gabriel's most recent album, I.O.?
I thought it was fine, a little overrated, if I'm honest. I think people did make it seem like it was the second coming of Christ or something. It's like it's fine. The last album of his that I really liked was the You Scratch My Back album. That was where he transformed all these covers through strings. I thought that was a very inventive album.
Okay, I'm going to play a quick little fun game with you there, Mr. Lyng. We're going to go through The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, track by track, and you are going to rate each one out of 5 stars. Are you ready? Are you ready to do this? Take a swig.
Yeah.
All right. Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, opener. How many stars?
6 stars.
6. Fly on a Windshield.
5.
Broadway Melody of 1974.
3.
Cuckoo Cocoon.
2. I'm sorry. Right.
I love that song. In the Cage.
6.
Ha ha ha. Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging.
I'm with Banks on this. Why did they bring in Eno? It doesn't really go anywhere. I'm giving that a 1.
Agree. Back in New York City.
6.
Agree. Hairless Heart. Steve Hackett's kind of one of his very few moments where he shines out on this record is Hairless Heart.
Yeah, 5.
5. Agree with you. Counting Out Time. The Genesis going Beatles pop.
I like the sentiment more than the song, so I'll give it 3.
All right, I'm going to go 5. Carpet Crawlers.
10. 5. Okay, I'm sorry.
Let's take a quick pause on Carpet Crawler. So we would be remiss if we did not talk about the 1999 hybrid reunion version of the Carpet Crawlers when they put together that Turn It On Again greatest hits package, where Peter kind of recorded his part, and then you can't even tell who's singing sometimes because their voices are so similar.
I know, it's wonderful. That was actually the first version I ever heard of that track.
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? Now they cut out a verse. I think which verse did they cut out? Was it the porcelain mannequin bit? I think they cut that out. Yeah,
which I think was originally meant for Ray Wilson to sing, but for some reason that didn't happen.
Well, this was kind of right after the Ray Wilson period, so they probably said let's just not include him in on it, which was a pity because they should have.
They should have. I think he seems like a good sport. I think he would have said yes.
He could have. That could have been his part for Carpet. But I do love that reimagined Carpet Crawlers from 1999. And I like you heard that first before I heard the album proper on this. Good one next. Chamber of 32 Doors.
4.
5. Lily White Lilith. Lily White Lilith. Let's on to the second disc.
3. I'll give it 3.
Agreed. Waiting Room, also known as the Evil Jam.
I'll give it 4.
I'll give it 3. Okay, let's go next. Classically, this is Tony Banks' shining moment anyway.
5. Let's give it to Banksy.
Yep, 5. Okay, here comes the supernatural and I can't even say it. Anesthetist.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that's give that 0. That should have been binned.
That should have been binned. Totally agree with that. Makes no sense. I've been on here. The Lamia.
The Lamia, I'll give it 4. But I agree with Tony Banks. When I interviewed him, he said that he wasn't too sure. He didn't think that the lyrics suited the melody. That he hadn't written that with those lyrics in mind, and it was always a bit of a sore point for him.
Right.
And I agree that it's a nicer melody, and it would have been better if. I will give it 4 for the melody.
4 for the melody, and I'll go 4 because of Hackett's wonderful solo on the outro is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, another dud coming. Silent Sorrow and Empty Boats.
1.
Agreed. Okay, the big second act song, The Colony of Slippermen.
3. Oh no, I'll give it 4.
4 because I kind of like it. This is kind of like almost like parallel to me with like In the Cage in terms of like it's a big theatrical number. It was the same kind of thing. It might meander a little too long. I think it goes on for about 2.5 minutes before the freaking song starts. You're like, okay, listening. You're listening. Okay. Boom. Now it starts. Could have done a little bit of trimming. You agree?
Oh God, yeah. You didn't need that 2 minutes of abstract nonsense.
No, you didn't need it. I get it. If you needed that time when you're performing this as a stage act to change instruments, tune, and things like that. But on an album, you could have done a little bit more of a tighter editing job on some of this stuff. Agreed. Track 8, Ravine.
I'll give it 2.
I'll give it 2. Okay. One of the final highlights on the end of the album here, The Light Lies Down on Broadway, kind of bookending this whole concept.
I'll give it 4.
Agreed. Okay. Riding the Scree, which has this aforementioned wonderful kind of Tony Banks keyboard stuff going on in it.
Oh, I'll give it 5. Come on for the keyboards.
It's fantastic. I agree. Riding the Scree. In the Rapids, now things slow down a little bit, and Peter's kind of like taken down, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of a mournful song, and you're like, okay, where is this going? In the Rapids. What do you got?
I'll give it 4.
Okay, I'll give it 3. And then we kind of wind up for the It. What do we got?
It doesn't really go anywhere. I'm giving it 2.
I'll go 2.5. It's just it goes out with a whimper for such an album that starts out right out of the gate with home run after home run. The Lamb, Fly on the Windshield, Broadway Melody, In the Cage, like home run tracks to start an album that starts out so strong. We do kind of limp to the finish line with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And despite my excitement, every time I either play the album or I see it done by the musical box, I'm like, I'm going to go see The Lamb. It's going to be so great. I find myself like looking at my watch, like halfway through the second disc. So, Mr. Banks, you are vindicated in your opinions on this record.
Well, he's not the only one. I think Rutherford and Hackett have also shared that opinion.
Yeah, Phil's been kind to it though. He doesn't slam it too much.
I think he said it's his favorite Genesis album.
It is. He has. Wow.
Yeah. Maybe because all he had to do was just be a drummer and he didn't have to worry about anything else. And he does some great, really, really great inventive drumming on it.
He does. He really does. I mean, for me, it's the musicianship on here is off the charts. And I haven't not had a chance to listen to this box set, despite getting it in November when it came out, because traveling, Paul went to the UK. I don't know about you, Owen, but I kind of listen to music in seasons, and I'm staring at my window right now, and the snow is on the ground, and it kind of lends itself to proggy type music, so I can find myself into a Genesis rabbit hole or a Yes rabbit hole, because it just for me, that's just how I listen to music. I don't know what your listening habits, how they kind of tend to go, but
I'm more like that when it comes to cinema. Like, I will happily watch Once Upon a Time in America or The Irishman in January. I'm not going to do that in August.
Funny. But it's we often talked about on Hands Across the Water. We talk about like, what other music do we like? Or do we suffer from Beatle fatigue? And I said, no, I don't suffer from Beatle fatigue, because I can pick up a book about Genesis or anybody else and dive into that artist and learn everything I can about it and take a break. And rabbit holes like this with Genesis, I'm so happy to do it and revisit it again, because it gives you a reason to revisit these tracks. So I want to thank you again for the interest.
Of course. No, I don't suffer from Beatle fatigue. I occasionally suffer from solo Lennon fatigue, because I find he's a bit one note, but I don't suffer from Beatle fatigue.
All right. Now, outside of just The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Eoghan Lyng, give us your top 10 Genesis songs of all time.
Oh, God. You don't make it easy. Well, obviously, number 1 has to be Supper's Ready.
Okay.
Number 2, I'm going to go with Afterglow.
Ooh, beautiful.
Yeah. Number 3, because I'm going to go with Ripples, because it's such a haunting melody. It's sung by Phil Collins.
Yes, it is.
Number 4, I'm actually going to champion Ray Wilson here and go with Not About Us. It's not about us anymore. It's all about the people that we want to fight for.
Okay.
Yeah, I love how he goes for that sort of 1990s grunge, where even on like a pastoral track, everything has to be down there.
Well, that was the time, wasn't it?
Yeah. What's that guy from Pearl Jam? We have him to blame for that.
Yeah.
I wanna be a runner.
Eddie Vedder.
Yeah. Everything he's doing, and I saw her standing there. Number 5, I'll go with Los Endos because I think it's just an incredible instrumental.
Oh my God, what a great instrumental.
Yeah. Number 6, because I want to give it to Steve Hackett. It's oh God, what's that? What is the track he wrote for Wind and Wuthering? Arabs and the Jews, boys.
Blood on the Rooftops.
Blood on the Rooftops. Yes, that's the one. Such a wonderful melody, such a haunting guitar line. Wind and Wuthering, I think, might be the best Genesis album.
It's the most romantic album, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Hackett's favorites, and just go to show that Banks and Hackett are very similar. They both say that's one of their favorites.
They do.
They both love that album.
They absolutely do. I know that Mike thinks it's a little bit weak. Mike has said that he thinks it's a bit weak, but I
mean, Darrell Easy did this fabulous piece about Wind and Wuthering, and Mike Rutherford said, well, if two of them love it, I can't, or something to that tune.
Beautiful.
So then we will go to like 80s Genesis with Domino.
For Domino, number 7, great 2-part song. Love that. What a live song that was, with the drums and Phil having the whole crowd going. Great track.
Yeah. And then I'll go for the same album because I wrote about it for the Record Collector issue, Throwing It All Away, which I'm surprised Mike Rutherford didn't say for the mechanics, but but Phil Collins was an incredible vocal on it.
And then number 9.
The number nine. A track that actually often reduces me to tears, which is Fading Lights from the We Can't Dance, because it's very much Tony Banks saying to Phil Collins, "You have my permission to move on."
Yeah,
and it's such a lovely way of parting of two minds and a parting, and it's just got, and the keyboard playing the instrumental interlude is just fabulous.
Certainly is.
Mm-hmm. And then we're on to number 10, aren't we?
Close it out with number 10, buddy.
Number 10. I'll go from something for the first album. The setting sun is happening.
Stagnation?
No, setting sun.
You're talking about from Genesis to Revelation. Wow.
Yeah. The one where Jonathan King was showing disinterest, so Tony and Peter just wrote like a Bee Gees track, just straight off.
Well, that's most of that record is very much Bee Gees. That was what they were trying to sound like. But
I don't know why they wanted to. You can only sound like yourself, so.
I tell you, I thought you were going to pull something from Trespass, which is an equally great record too.
It is. So. Stand and be fine, and you know
the Knife, which I think that was their attempt of Keith Emerson of being the nice, right? They've said that, they were a little bit of a
some of you are going to die. I'm just okay. That'll be my number 11. Cheeky number. This one goes to 11.
There's the number. I was going to say you got to get something from Trespass in there. Come on.
Okay, fine. Okay, I'll exchange my number 10 for a Knife. Okay, it is a better song. Like Anthony Phillips, he's really belting it out on the guitar on that one.
He is. Good stuff. Yeah. Well,
have you met Anthony Phillips? He's such a lovely man.
I have not, but I've seen your work with him, and I've seen him interviewed a bunch of times, and he seems like a brilliant man. And I have his record, The Geese and the Geese and the what's it called? The Geese and the Ghost. The Geese and the Ghost. And I haven't listened to it yet, but I want to, because it's one of those things where the album cover looks great, but I'm sure it's good. Yeah.
And I mean, the very fact that apparently his departure was the one where Banks and Rutherford went, "We're screwed, we need to give up now."
Well, because
not Peter Gabriel, not Steve Hackett.
They felt when Ant Phillips left, wow, we're really doomed, because he was such a big part of the early Genesis period.
I interviewed him by phone. I haven't met him.
Oh, he's a lovely. I'm going to give that record a listen again, because everybody seems to praise it.
But this is how generous he is. It was supposed to be a 20-30 minute interview. An hour later, we're still talking.
Well, because what are these guys going to do? These guys are, what are they going to do? Go play golf? Of course, if somebody finds their work interesting, nobody's beating their door down probably, 8 days a week for interviews. So you're a respectable journalist. I'll give this guy an hour of my time, no problem.
Yeah, and And this is how nice he was. He said, so Owen, how many other members of Genesis have you interviewed? Oh, Steve, he's wonderful. And Tony, oh, he's wonderful. Bill Bruford, yeah, he was in the band for a bit. Oh, that's very good.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it
Yeah.
here for this episode here on the Backwards Traveler here. Wrapping up The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. If you've never listened to it, give it a listen. If you know the album well, you can't stand it, or you have favorites, do let me know in the comments below what you think of Genesis as a whole, the solo work. And it's a favorite of mine. If you had to name my top favorite 5 bands outside of the Beatles, Genesis is in that top 5. And always enjoy kind of going down rabbit holes listening to their music. I'd like to thank Eoghan Lyng for joining me today. Owen, where can they find you on all your various platforms?
Well, I'm on Insta, I'm on Blue Sky, and if you live in Ireland, you can probably meet me at the Kinsale Beatles Fest on January 31st.
Ah, very good. The Kinsale Fest, where Owen will be at this is the second Kinsale.
I hope to.
Yeah, that'll be great. You can go there. You can meet our friend Susan Ryan of New York Fest fame, and you could hopefully do some nice work together. Hopefully some of that stuff's going to get recorded and posted. Hopefully, I'd love to see your contributions at that fest.
Well, I'm just going as a spectator or a possible journalist. I mean, I'm not going to speak, but it would be very nice to meet Jason and Stephen from Nothing Is Real. I think Lewison's going to be there. Ken Womack, I think, is going to be there.
I think he'll be there as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Be nice to join you. It would have been nice to join you, but having just been to the UK, for a few weeks ago, we've got to time our visits up differently. But I do wish them luck at that. This is their second annual one, and I hope they realize that you're in attendance and they say, "Look, we've got that guy Owen. We should get him on a few things." You should.
Oh, come on! No. I mean, they've got Stephen and Jason who are fabulous podcast guys. So they've got ample people talking.
They do. But
Stephen and Jason, they've got tremendous radio voices. Like Stephen's got that Ulster kind of multi sound, and Jason's got the Skippy Dublin voice to him, and they're a great team. It's a shame that show ended.
Yeah, should be good fun. But Owen, I'd like to thank you for being here today to chew the fat on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and there is his article in the Record Collector magazine, which you can get anywhere. If you just go to Record Collector, you could order it online. It takes a while to get here if you are in America. So keep up the good work. I can't wait to see more of your work there. And thank you, Daryl. And Daryl Easley, if you're watching this, I'll be in touch. We're going to have you on again soon to chew the fat on more things proggy rock. And maybe the 3 of us will do something together. How about that?
I'd be up for that, yeah. It all depends on Daryl's schedule. I mean, Daryl's a journalist par excellence, so he's a very, very busy man.
Well, look forward to that. So we will see you on the next episode here on the Backwards Traveler. Look for me on my other podcasts, Hands Across the Water, Two Legs, but it always comes right back here to me on my own channel. So Owen, thanks for a good conversation today, and we'll see everybody next time. Take care.